All right, welcome back to this week's edition of the Rock and Roll Ghost podcast. This week we have filmmaker Andrew Baird. Andrew's new film, One Way, starring, I just want to say Machine Gun Kelly. What's his actual name?
Colson Baker.
Colson Baker. I knew it was something like that. Kevin Bacon's in it, Drea de Matteo, Travis Fimmel. And if Andrew looks familiar to anybody that watches this show, this is actually his second appearance. You're the first person to appear twice. So congratulations on that, I guess.
That's great, man.
Yeah.
Cool.
One Way is available on home video now, and it's a fun film. Well, fun might be the wrong term, but I enjoyed it. So we were just starting to talk about what I thought of it, and there you go. I liked Colson. I'm not really a fan of his music, but I seem to so far have liked him in movies more. He's more gifted, I guess, than I assumed he would be. And then Kevin Bacon, Drea, Storm Reid, Travis Fimmel, who you worked with on Zone 414, is back here on this one too. So yeah, it was a good time.
Yeah, Colson's a good actor. I mean, he always was. I mean, that's why I cast him.
Yeah.
But yeah, a lot of people said they were surprised, but I wasn't surprised. I mean, I knew he was ideal for it, and he wanted to do it right away.
Yeah.
He did exactly what I thought he would do. And other than we had to do it very quickly, and he was on tour. I don't know. Was he on tour? Or he just did Saturday Night Live literally the day before he came to Georgia to shoot. So we had no time to really get to know each other, whatever. We had a few chats on the phone, and but he was on it right away. I mean, he was like 1,000%. I gotta do this. And I'd seen him in The Dirt. So manager Jib, who produced this, as well as he also did, we worked together all the time, but he also did a Western with Colson called The Last Son. That he did with Sam Worthington. And I said, when he put him in that, I said, oh, that kid's great. I saw him in The Dirt playing Tommy Lee, and he really stood out, from the movie and stuff. He's a naturally gifted film actor. Like all his things are correct,
Yeah, he was. I was one of those people. The Motley Crue movie got a lot of crap, but I actually enjoyed the hell out of that because it was just, it was just the way I remember the kind of the band's image from that time. And he was excellent as Tommy Lee. I don't think anybody could have been better. And he's very strong in this film, So I mean, I wasn't sure if like The Dirt was going to be like a one-off. It's only the second time I've seen him in anything, but after this, I'd be willing to see something else he's been in, just based on that, because he was with it from start to finish. He really was in his character. I felt like he knew who the character was, and it just, I'm not saying it's, am I saying he should get an Oscar? Maybe not that, but it's, so often you see people just kind of like are miscast or don't come prepared to inhabit the role.
Well, Colson didn't need to come prepared. I mean, but he and I have plenty of life experience to prepare for a movie like One Way. So, he'd been preparing. He was made for this role, and he did it. I mean, I think people have been like blown away, surprised, amazed, thrilled. Like his performance across the board by almost everyone has been like unanimous. Like, this guy's amazing.
Yeah.
And then you he goes in with Kevin Bacon, and they were just magic together, you know.
Yeah.
And the rest of all the cast are brilliant. Storm Reid is amazing. She's an incredible new talent, and like Colson, you know, she's just. But Storm is only an actress or an actor, whereas Colson is trying to balance being a rock star and a movie star. That's tough because his music career is going bananas.
Yeah.
And he also did a lead in another movie that just came out called Taurus, where it's kind of semi. I wouldn't say it's autobiographical, but it's about a musician and a downward spin, and he's really good in that as well. It's beautiful. Well, yeah, it is a beautiful movie. It's hard, but my manager, produced that as well with a really talented New York independent filmmaker, Tim Sutton.
Mm-hmm.
So it's interesting that Colson has these two movies playing at the moment, and
yeah.
you know, it's, you know, he's got everything required to be a movie star. It's just other than availability, you know. Yeah. It's like his music career is really on, you know, he's like it gone mainstream, and he's like it started touring in Europe. He just did a tour in Europe and stuff, but all that so I suppose that's the thing. We didn't have any rehearsal time, but yet he was, you know, prepared for this his whole life, and it had that energy to it. And then because of COVID and all of that craziness, you know, it just added to the intensity, trying to shoot in a bus and not get COVID and all of that stuff, you know.
Yeah.
It was very intense. It was not a fun movie to make at all.
Okay.
You know? But also a lot of it was to do with the subject matter, and the locate, you know, where it's all set in a bus. So we're all in a bus for a month. Yeah. Pretty much. And but it was just such a great ensemble of actors. Travis was brilliant. Like, I'm so proud of what he's just did a great turn in this. I think I haven't seen like oodles of Travis's work. If I haven't seen an actor's work already, I try to avoid seeing. If I'm going to work with them, I don't want to see them. So I'd seen snippets of Travis in Vikings and a couple of other things, you know, but I think this is some of his best stuff for sure. I don't know. I mean, I think he did a phenomenal job playing Will. And Drea had a lot to do extremely quickly. I say unfortunately, because I would have loved to have had more time with her. She was fantastic, you know, and you know, it was great because she's done a few movies this year. I think she has, but she'd been kind of chilling with her kids for a bit, and we hit it off right away. She's fantastic. And then the other guy, Luis da Silva, who just came through some of the producers, and I'd seen Lewis in 999, the Hillcoat movie, John Hillcoat, and Lewis played the gang banger, the head of the gang, one of the leaders or whatever that Casey Affleck went toe to toe with, and he stood out to me on that. He was in it for like 4 minutes, and I was like, whoa, he was the most, I don't know. Anyway, he did a great job, and then, you know, there's Thomas Francis Murphy played the bus driver. Then we had Katie O'Hare, who came out of nowhere. Like, I cast her because of her eyes, and there was like all 6 of them on the bus going at it in some of these big scenes, as you know. And Katie was holding her own with Kevin Bacon, and it was great. It was so cool because the day Kevin showed up, the first day he showed up, he was right in it. I put him right in it with all the other actors. Yeah. And it was just like, they were all in it together, you know, all in it. And he loves that. Kevin Bacon is just such a pro, and he, terrific actor, total gentleman. Just a gift to have him. But he was interested in Colson as an actor, and he loved the role. He loved the script, but Colson was a draw to him, as he should be, and they were great together, right? Even like visually, they look like father and son, right?
Yeah, yeah. They have a feeling that that they couldn't be too far off from each other, at least.
Yeah.
So how did, out of all of them, I guess the one I'm most curious about how you got to was Kevin. How did the script get its way to him, and how did that process go?
The movie cast super fast, so record time, few months we had it fully cast. So with Kevin, I brought Travis in first to Will, and then Colson came in to play Freddie, and then I had a little chat about who'd be good for Fred Senior playing asshole, and Kevin's name came up because his manager's brother was working with Jib on another movie. His manager's David Schiff, and his brother's Paul Schiff. They're great. I don't know David. I might have communicated with him once or twice, but Paul I know, and they're great. Paul's a really seasoned producer in Hollywood. He did like My Cousin Vinny, and he's done a lot of movies. He came out from under Joe Roth, and they're really classy guys. So and we sent it to David, and David loved the script, gave it to Kevin. Kevin was available, and I was on the phone to him, I don't know, probably within a week, and we had a great chat, and he said he wanted to do it. That was it.
Yeah.
Really straightforward, very smooth, which is unusual. Casting is probably, other than getting the script right, but I'd say casting is even more difficult. And I try personally I try and avoid, after One Way, I got involved in a project where the script wasn't right, and by the time we got it into a place that worked well as a movie, it was very different to what was financed, and it just was a mess. So I try and not come on to something that's not castable. And then we go, because the process of casting is usually very difficult. But with One Way, it cast. Also, nobody was working, you see. I was in post on Zone, and nobody was working because of COVID. So we had I mean, like Brad Pitt was out of work, Bacon was out of work. Tom Cruise was out of work. So it's like people were reading and stuff. We were one of the few movies that kind of launched in the height of COVID. And then we shot it last year, at the start of last year. And it was like COVID, one case and we would have been finished. One case. Because we couldn't afford on an indie budget to, survive a COVID outbreak,
Yeah. So you filmed it at the beginning of 2021, correct?
It's February 2020. February 20 of last year, 2021.
Okay.
I'm doing my next movie in February 2020. This coming. I'm leaving tomorrow to go back to the UK and start that.
Okay.
And that shoots Feb 23. And we shot this Feb 2021. I did a lot of post. Not a lot of post. It didn't require a lot of post. It required a lot of editorial.
Yeah.
And it was great. I'm allotting about 5-6 months to cut the next movie. And I might do it, on and off, but that's where I really do the writing, and we tweaked this quite a bit to make the opening work. I'm still have issues with the opening, and we had to shoot it quicker than I would have wanted, both with Drea's stuff and with the chase and things like that. But narratively, I think it works quite well. But I just think I would have liked more time to work on it, So
Okay.
to shoot it. but we spent a lot of time because that wasn't the original opening of the movie, as per the script. So we put together the original opening, which was the chase, but it didn't have any of the interrogation stuff, and it wasn't working. So we had to figure out, that's why I think it's my favorite part of filmmaking now is the editorial, because it's really where the movie comes. It's really where the movie comes alive. It's where you find the movie, So, and it was at a great Irish, again, I did all of the post in Windmill Lane in Dublin. I think the last time we spoke, I was in Windmill Lane doing post on this when we were doing press for Zone.
That would probably figure. It was around September, October of last year.
Okay. I'd say no. Zone came out again like September, the same as One Way came out September this year. So it probably was around August. And I just came back to LA for Zone coming out, and then I went back to finish One Way.
Okay.
And still, everything was still shut down. Even when it's only, what is it, since the summertime that things have really kind of opened up, and we'll see. We still have to have protocols on the next movie with COVID and stuff, and a buddy of mine's movie just shut down because of COVID in New Mexico, but it's much looser now, and it's more manageable, I believe. Touch wood, So
yeah. No, I get the impression that we're kind of close to being out of the woods on it. There hasn't been any significant, upticks of any kind. So, or either that, or just people have just gotten fed up of reporting on it. I don't know. I would imagine if it got out of hand again, we'd hear about it. But
I think you got to learn to live with it. It's not gone. Hasn't disappeared. Hasn't gone away. Right. It's just more manageable, and if you got pre-existing conditions, et cetera. I mean, I got COVID in April. It's funny. I just come back from London, and I got it on the subway, on the tube in London, I think. Carried it through Dublin to LA, and by the time I got to LA, I was sick, and I was gone in 3 days. So, but I think the big issue is if you're older and you've got other conditions, it can really affect you.
Yeah.
So, but we got to just get on with it, right? So, anyway, this was a COVID movie for sure, but I did all the post on Zone in COVID, because just as I started the post on Zone, COVID hit, and the first wave, and we were able to cast, finance, shoot this, and even by the time I got back to Ireland to edit One Way, Ireland was locked down more than ever, and it's really only, and then I came back to LA like this late February, March, and it was around, I don't know, I remember, it was the summertime when it really started, because I've been traveling all the time. I was in Istanbul doing some work there in the summer, early summer, and that's when it really was like nobody gave a damn. Nobody was wearing masks on the planes anymore or anything like that. So it was game on. So
hopefully everything's gonna be okay. When did you how did you come across the script? At what point did you how did you come across it? When did you first get it, and what was it that attracted you to tell this story?
Well, I was first, okay, so even before Zone had kind of started, the original producer, I mean, what do you want to call him, the Irish producer on this, his name is Tim Palmer. He did a famous Irish movie with Jim Sheridan and Mike Newell called Into the West, about the kids, the traveling kids on horses in the west of Ireland or whatever. or in Ireland. Gabriel Byrne and Ellen Barkin were in it. It was a pretty famous movie that Miramax did, early Miramax. And anyway, Tim had done a few movies. He did one of Jared Leto's first movies called The Last of the High Kings, and he's a pretty interesting guy, Tim. He's very good with material and find it. He also did a phenomenal no-budget independent movie called Patrick's Day. That was the kind of start of an Irish actor who's well-regarded, definitely well-regarded in Ireland, the UK, called Mo Dunford. He was actually in the new Texas Chainsaw with Alwyn Fuere, who I've worked with. Anyway, Tim did that, Patrick's Day. He just has done a lot of interesting kind of movies that are quality. He's great with material, finding material. So my lawyer had sent him a script that I wanted to do, which wasn't that great, and Tim didn't like it, but he liked my work. He'd seen my reel of work, and he sent me another script from the writer, which was much bigger than One Way, and I really liked it. But I was working on Zone, and I think what happened was my lawyer and Tim, and then my producing partner Martin Brennan got together in Ireland. I was in LA, but they got together in Ireland, and out of their meeting came this other script from the writer called One Way. And I remember Martin had sent me One Way saying, "Oh, I think we're going to do this first." And he sent it to me, and it was set in Ireland, and I wasn't interested in it at all. It was originally a bus ride between one side of Ireland and the next.
Okay.
Then it became a bus ride between the south of Ireland to the north. And I'm like, this just doesn't interest me, because it's very provincial. And that's the thing, it's like I've done a few trips over the years to the Middle East for various work stuff, and the thing you'll notice there is like in a lot of parts of the world is Hollywood dominates. Even when the music is local, the movies are not. The Hollywood always dominates, or American cinema, which is essentially Hollywood, not American independent, but Hollywood dominates global movie, entertainment when it comes to movies. So it's difficult to finance a movie that's like a genre piece that isn't often set in America, because you got to cast it, you got to finance it, etc. And when it comes to a crime movie, okay, if it's set in London, sure, but Dublin has a crime element that works very well. They did a great show called Love Hate. I don't know whether it traveled that well. It's a fantastic show. It works, but for this, it didn't work for me. I just wanted the vistas of America and the great. I don't know. I was like, it should be set in America, and I can't remember, but they'd already done a pass or something. No, I left it. I went and made Zone, and then that's right, when we were shooting Zone in Belfast, Jib, my manager, said, "Hey, they want you to look at the American version of One Way. They've done an American version, and it's financed, So I'm like, okay. And when people say something is financed, most of the time it's not. It's particularly because if they say, "Look, we got Brad Pitt, it's financed," you don't even need to say it's financed because you got Brad Pitt. But if you don't have any talent and you say it's financed, well, unless you got some rich Saudi prince, which is highly unlikely most of the time, and even the Saudi prince wants Brad Pitt as well. Yeah. It's not financed, Anyway, so I looked at it and I read. That's right. And I kind of dabbled with it, and I can't remember, but I still didn't want to do it. I can't remember. Maybe it wasn't the American version. I think they'd said, "Oh no, it's financed, but it's still set in Ireland." I'm like, I'm not interested in doing it in Ireland. Yeah. And then when I'd locked the picture on Zone, which is around June of 2020, I came back to LA, and on the plane over, I saw Good Time by the Safdie brothers. Mm-hmm. And I was like mesmerized, and and I had also done this electronic music video. But it was a narrative. You know, it was like two actors that I cast, a couple of hooligans on the run out in the California desert, a couple of junkies, and I'd done a shot of video, multiple cameras, very verite, and it was the first piece. This was 10 years ago, and it kind of launched me as a director in America. Got me the attention of The Weeknd, and I did his video, and then that's what got me the Zone script. So it was a very important piece of work for me, and I was very proud of it. It was a very good piece of work, very strong. And I was like, oh, wow. So then I equated, like, I saw Good Time. I knew I'd done the Gunslinger video. And then I was like, I was speaking to Martin, and he mentioned, well, look, there's an American version of the script of One Way. And I'm like, okay, well, so I wasn't enthusiastic and I wasn't optimistic. And he sent it to me, and I read 10 pages. I'm like, okay, I can do it. I'm in.
Yeah.
And okay, so whenever that was, late June, I said I'm in. Literally, I was in. Travis has a ranch up in Santa Clarita, and I went up there, and Jib went up there. And by the time I got to the ranch, Travis wanted to do the movie. Okay. But that was like around the next day or 2 days later. Okay. And then I had to go back to Ireland to finish post on Zone. And I was like, how about Colson to play Freddie? And because Jib hadn't shot the last one yet, but they were gearing up to do it. And we sent it to Colson, and it's going to take a couple of weeks. He's on tour or whatever. 2 days later, it's like, Jib's called me. He needs to talk to you right away. He just got off a plane, and he's like crazy to do the movie. And then 2-3 weeks later, we had Kevin, and that was our cast. That was what we announced and financed with, you know?
Yeah.
That's how fast it happened, you know, after, you know, and actually I suppose the lesson is, don't jump into something too quick.
Yeah.
Oh, I mean, something else just kind of, so it's funny, something else came in like September. I was in London just before this came out. Oh no, yeah, but I was here. I was in LA. I met a writer who happens to be Irish, and out of the blue, that day I met a writer. I met another filmmaker. Two very important meetings, because the filmmaker I met actually helped trigger the casting of the movie I'm about to do. I don't want to mention it because we're about to announce it, and okay. Whatever. Anyway, I'm about to do my third movie, and we're doing it in Northern Ireland, and it's a Western. And then literally after that meeting, I go across the road and I meet this writer from Dublin. And he just was like, oh man, I'd love you to read one of my things. And he sent me this cop movie. And I was in London then, and I started reading it. I'd read about 20 pages, and I had to stop because I liked it, and I didn't want to get my head caught up in it, because I was doing the Western.
Yeah.
And then literally a week ago, a financier emailed me through my manager to say, oh, we have this movie that we really think you'd be perfect for. And lo and behold, it's the cop movie.
Yeah.
And the writer had not, you know, it's just, so that's on the near horizon as well.
Gotcha.
And my point is if something's meant to happen, it'll happen, you know? And because after One Way, I got caught up in a movie that I probably shouldn't have, with a pretty well-known star. And we all just couldn't get the script right, you know. And by the time we got the script right, it didn't satisfy the financing, and it was just a mess. I got involved in something I shouldn't have, and I got involved for the wrong reasons. And although I'm very happy with how we made it work, but I just have to be, to answer your question in a nutshell, the right pieces come to me and the wrong pieces I chase.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So if I just, they really do. I mean, they really do. Even the Western kind of came to me a couple of times and I said no, you know, but the one that I just talked about that kind of collapsed or was a mess, that's one I chased because I thought, oh, it's, you know, X actor, I can do this, blah, 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 blah. Right. And it's, yeah, but I knew one way, I knew this movie, you know, I don't think I could have made this movie if I hadn't spent all this time in the US, you know, because I feel like I'm primarily an American filmmaker working in Europe. I mean, that's the way I see myself, an American genre filmmaker working in Europe. And I think that fits me very well. And I wouldn't be able to do these movies if I didn't live in the US all these years, you know, but it's so interesting to be able to do a lot of the work in Europe, you know, whereas this third movie we're shooting in Northern Ireland, and we're probably going to split the post or do it between Southern Ireland and London or whatever. So, but it's an American movie.
Yeah.
So it's interesting, you know, but it gives them a certain flavor. I don't know, because One Way was an Irish writer, Irish producer, Irish director, and it became what it is now, you know, which is a very American movie, right?
Yeah, definitely. And yeah, you know, you were talking about the one that you chased. You know, sometimes it's the idea that you're, you know, you try to put, you know, trying to stuff a square peg into a round hole kind of thing. Sometimes just, you know, in that case, you guys got it to where you liked it more, you know, you're saying, but the people that wanted to pay for it weren't as happy with it in the end. And so you just basically wasted essentially a lot of time on something that, and that happens in Hollywood all the time. Films go through all these years sometimes of being worked on to just be abandoned, you know?
Yeah. You know, I also think, you know, I gave the star the role of his life and shaped the, you know, and I don't know, I can't even tell you because I don't know, I really don't know. I think he just got cold feet. He got worried because I stripped away all the bullshit and it was just a great performance to be done. And I don't know. And he's from my neck of the woods, and it was very disappointing when it went down, because we could have made a smaller, it was a smaller movie anyway, because that's what it was meant to be. It started out, what was sold and financed was a much bigger piece. And then that, I knew that wasn't, it wasn't a total waste of time, although I will not do it again, because I took an idea that had a poor script and turned it into the right script and a quality piece for this particular actor who's really a star. You know, there's actors, there's stars, there's actors who are stars. This guy, yeah, it's a shame because it was a great opportunity. Who knows though? You never know. But then there was, you never know what might happen. But it taught me how to make a piece of material work in the writing stage, you know.
Yeah.
But again, that's to me is a dicey proposition because it's a hornet's nest, or it's a like you can get lost in. And I am not a writer. I don't want to be a writer. You know, I'm a filmmaker. I think One Way has made me a solid filmmaker. I'm very proud of the movie, and I will reserve my writing for, and then I don't storyboard now all the time. It depends on the piece, but storyboarding is my writing, and the editorial is a massive area of the writing for me.
Yeah.
making, or like cinema or whatever, is like it never stops forming and morphing until the end, you know.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it's extraordinary what you can do narratively with the same material when it's rearranged in a different way. You know, it's amazing, and that's why I think I mean, personally, I mean, I had total control over Zone, and everyone was very happy with it, as was I, and I delivered it, and but there was only so many ways you could cut that movie. It was because we had to cut a lot of stuff out. One way was a much more different. It just required a lot more. There was a lot more options and opportunities, and they all needed to be explored. Even like, you know, with the DGA deal, you know, the director's kicked out after about 10, 12 weeks. That's horrific to me. Horrific. I mean, I'm like, that's not my game. I need time to, and I've done this thing where I assemble the movie after I've shot it. A lot of people assemble as they shoot with their editor, but I've assembled both Zone and One Way, and it's kind of something I don't mind. Do the assembly after I've shot, and then you know, and it takes, you know, 3-4 weeks with that, and then the editing begins. And I just, because I'm quite comprehensive with how I shoot, and I've done a lot of stuff in the past, so I haven't found myself in situations where, oh, I didn't shoot what I needed to shoot to cover something or something like that. Sometimes it's like you got to put it together to see, like, are you missing? There was a moment where we thought we were going to shoot some extra stuff for One Way, but then it was very hard to get Colson's availability. It's tricky to do pickups with, like, you know, busy people, busy talent. Yeah. With Zone, we didn't even have an option because of COVID. But what I did was all the video stuff, the snuff stuff was all self-shot by the talent that was involved, you know. So we did it afterwards, you know, and I directed them remotely, you know. So anyway, the editorial for me is, it's my half brother was very famous, still is, like, he's British, but he's a famous Hollywood action film editor, and you know, editing is like the most important part, I think, of filmmaking, because it can all go out the window if it's not properly edited.
Yeah.
And properly, I mean thoroughly, or whatever you want to call it, where the material is maximized, you know. Mm-hmm. So, and we definitely had this Irish editor, Dublin-based guy called John Walters, where Zone was edited by a British guy, but he's based in Dublin, called Tony Cranston. Tony actually got nominated for an award at the Irish Film Awards, which is for the local guys is prestigious, you know.
Yeah.
For me too, even though, like, the thing is, Brett, like, it's kind of like, this is my third trip over to do my third movie in the, you know, Ireland, UK, and it's like, I'm still an Irish filmmaker, you know, but I'm making these American movies, so it's but it's a big part of what I've been doing. So, you know, get recognition from your country means a lot, you know.
Yeah, definitely.
So anyway, it was cool. So hopefully John gets appropriate recognition for his work on One Way, because I have to say, the DP, you know, the cameraman, mm-hmm. on One Way, who I've worked with a lot, is Italian, Tobias Sempi. Some critics actually criticized the look of the movie. I think it's I don't know about you, but it doesn't, and that's the thing. I learned this from I've learned it from watching Ridley Scott, like, saying, fuck the reviewers. You know, you need to be confident in what you've done. What did he say? Because I have a producer who produced for Ridley, and he was instrumental in getting us Zone off the ground, because he had relationships with Guy and Travis from Prometheus and Raised by Wolves. Mark Huffam is his name, and this movie we're doing next is Mark's kind of baby, you know, so it's pretty cool. But anyway, Ridley was saying that, you know, when you're done, you look at it, are you happy with it? You need to be happy with it, and you walk away, and that's it. Now, of course, you want variety, and you want high Rotten Tomato scores, and you want Hollywood Reporter, and you want The Guardian, and I just got, like, One Way just got singled out by the New York Times.
Really?
And my manager, Jim, I was like, he was like, oh my God, man. They picked 5 elevated action movies from around the world, and One Way represented America.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, it was, because the New York Times is like I believe is the whatever you want to call it, the top of the food chain when it comes to film criticism. So what was I saying? Anyway, it really was like, yeah, just, you need to be, so I am confident with it. I know my issues with it. I know it works, as I said, the opening. And yeah, regarding the cinematography, I think Tabia, who's Italian, and I know we did Gunslinger. That was our first job together. If you want to call it a job, we did it for like $50 or it was about $5,000 music video. And, you know, we devised this multiple camera verite, not that it's unique, but it was very much the Sesevite's like verite, but we had digital cameras. So we devised a certain technique, and we used them in videos and some commercial branded work we did together. And this was the first feature we did together. And I think we might be doing the next movie together.
Yeah.
The Western, which is anyway. So, but what he did was phenomenal. I mean, also in terms of the fact that we shot that movie, it's a movie about on a bus ride, and most of it was shot in a warehouse. So very little resources, but I just we have a very special relationship. So what did you think of the cinematography? Did it work for you? Because
I thought it worked well. I thought the mood was captured well. I certainly didn't even get the impression that you filmed it on a sound stage, to be honest.
Well, that's, you know,
but that's movies. I even though I've read a million things about movies, I still try to go into every movie as if I was the 6-year-old kid that saw Star Wars. Like, I don't know anything, you know. I over the years I've gotten away from reading too much about stuff beforehand, because I'd like to be as surprised as possible, you know.
Yeah.
Just that's just the way it is.
So like there was massive to do this movie. Like, we end up going to LED studios. You know, there was one in Dublin when I was still there finishing Zone, and they did Foundation, you know, the Apple show. So they do all the LED screens for that, or they did when they did the first season in Ireland. And we went through all the options about do this, do that, do the other. And in the end, we did a very old school poor man's process. And it worked. Nobody ever questioned it, you know. And a lot of that is to do with that's cinematography, that's lighting, that's but it's not just, and then it's also the framing, you know. I'm super happy. The only thing I would say maybe is it could have like toned down a little bit of the swing and tilt, you know, the focus, you know, the blurry stuff, maybe it went a little overboard at times, but
yeah, I know. I didn't feel that way, at least.
Okay. Well,
I mean, for me the only criticism I really had was, you know, I felt like there were certain things here and there that I felt like I could have gotten more in depth on in terms of relationships, like
right,
you know, like the fact that and it's spoiler if you're watching this, but at the end with Drea's character and Colson's, they have this you know, in truly they had a close relationship, it seems.
Yeah.
And I don't know if the decision was made to have that be a surprise, so the ending's more surprising, or if that's just something that, you know, what just might have gotten lost in you know, from A to B. I'm not sure.
Well, I mean, basically, he was served up to Vic by his dad.
Yeah.
So they had this pretty incestuous kind of like relationship, you know. And so did we? The fact that we never saw any backstory on that per se, I don't know. I mean, it's fun.
That was just one thing I felt, and you know, like
Totally cool, man. And it's
yeah.
like, you know, it's like it's a script thing. It's character work, and yet a piece of material that could not have cast quicker, faster, with better. It's funny, isn't it? And yet, you know, actually, I think a couple of people might have said, you know, oh, there's not enough backstory, or there's not enough depth within the character relationships, etc., etc. I understand, but it's like sometimes you can get lost with that stuff too. It's
absolutely, you could go on too long with over explaining, and what I meant by that was just like maybe, you know, a few lines of dialogue or something else in the phone scenes, or they're just like little tiny things that would have just added more depth. That's small because I still, no matter what, I still got the gist of what everybody's relationship and where everybody is without needing to over explain anything too.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, Brett, I hear you. Like there was one piece in the movie, one scene where we actually took a scene that we shot, and so it was basically it's an interplay between Freddie and Vic, and her henchman Coco's in the background, you know, and basically we used the footage that we shot, but we would intercut it so we could drop in new dialogue from Vic to kind of talk about their relationship. It was very brief, but like Freddie was like, we're done, you know, our relationship is done or whatever, but maybe it was still too brief. So it was lacking when we put it together, and we tried to enhance it further. Now that's a scenario where, we'll go and we'll do a pickup. But you got to get Colson, you got to get Drea.
No, absolutely.
You know? But what I'm saying is like on a studio movie or on some like no budget independent, sure, you know, it can be done, but not with these kind of level movies where, what do you want to call them? Like they're like, you know, they're just at the budget level where it's just like, you know, we don't have the resources to like reassemble talent, like high caliber talent and busy talent, and be like, okay, it just, although we were close to doing a pickup scene with Colson and Lewis in LA, because he was doing another movie there, and then Drea lives in Laurel Canyon, so we could have, but it's still tricky, man, you know, because you're talking, you know, it can be done and it gets done. I'm not saying it doesn't, even on independent like these are like independent commercial movies, but anyway, we thought, okay, well we'll utilize ADR, you know, and sound design or whatever, and drop in some more stuff. We did a lot of sound work on this movie. You're probably not quite aware of it, but there's the sound designer, his name is Fionn O'Higgins. What an Irish name. Yeah.
Sounds like a bar.
Yeah, he's part of Windmill Lane, and he did Zone as well, but this one was a much more complex, intricate movie soundtrack in terms of like dialogue, sound design, music, everything, and because the movie was remade again in the sound, so you know, even when you lock the picture, actually Jim Sheridan, you know Jim Sheridan, who made like My Left Foot and Name of the Father. He was in Windmill Lane doing a documentary on some French lady who was murdered in Ireland back in the 90s or something. It was a famous case. He was doing it for Sky or something. And he was there, and I showed him the movie. And I went to school. It's funny, his daughter has a boat on the slip here that I have my boat on in Marina del Rey. And we both went to film school together, him and his daughter and myself. And but I didn't know Jim, but Jim was there. And I asked him would he watch the movie, and he did. And he really seemed to like it. But he said the opening had an issue. So he helped me with the opening. That's you know, cool. Like we what do you call it? Brainstormed some ideas, you know. And a lot of those ideas and things we were able to facilitate through sound design. So, you know, I did a soft lock on the picture. I took a break. Zone came out. I went back to Dublin. I started working I had a few sessions with Jim to fix, because I knew I needed to fix the opening. And it took about 2 months before we went and did another final couple of weeks of edit to lock the picture. And then that's the picture locked. But then begins the sound design.
Right.
And all the ADR and that's when the movie got made again, you know. So particularly on a movie like this, there is quite a bunch of things that were clarified that would have been very confusing if we hadn't have done sufficient amount of sound work and ADR, you know, to clarify things. But it was fun to do that. I mean, it was inspiring to do that. It's not just the picture editorial, it's also the audio. I mean, you know, I can't say enough about how much a movie gets made in the post production, you know, with sound and picture, and how that stuff is assembled and how the sound can be manipulated. You know, even when you could be like, you could have a scene with two characters and they're talking about going to the store to pick up sausages. Well, you can recut that and make it about a scene where they're talking about getting their hair done, but you just shoot the other character, and then over the soundtrack, the other characters off camera is talking about getting their hair done.
Yeah.
And you can change the narrative, and you can fix things and tweak things, and it's an amazing. I just love, and Windmill Lane has been an enormous ally in these movies. So I hope we can make this work on number 3. I think we can.
Yeah.
There's just certain. It's not Windmill Lane. It's more. Ireland doesn't make it easy when it comes to bringing in business and stuff. And there's a lot of legalities and paperwork and red tape and stuff. So, but I think we'll make it work. So.
Well, I wanted to ask you, Zone, I believe, had a pretty successful run on Netflix. Is that correct?
Yeah, it did, man. I mean, I was really happy about that. That was the cherry on the cake for Zone. The American distributor did a great deal. Oh, One Way, by the way, has premieres on Hulu on New Year's Eve.
Okay.
All right. So it's a big premiere. It's a big date, and everyone's pretty excited about that. It's a kind of a big whatever. What do they call it? I can't remember. There's all these different terminologies. Anyway, it's the big kind of online push of. It's the same as when Zone had its Netflix debut on New Year's Day. It's amazing. Zone came out in America. I mean, it debuted on Netflix on New Year's Day of this year.
Yeah.
One Way is debuting on Hulu on New Year's Eve.
Yeah.
And I'll be like, like we'll be like a couple of weeks into hard prep on the next on the next movie.
Yeah.
It's been a prolific year, but it did really well on Netflix. It was in the top 10 for 3 weeks, and there was 5 studio movies and 4 Netflix movies, big budget, stuff. And I'm like, wow. It was really cool, man. It was, it really was. And Guy, I'm doing the next movie with Guy, by the way, which is I'm thrilled about. And
very cool.
Shit, I don't know when I said that, but anyway, whatever. It'll be not good enough. But it's what did I? He was thrilled with it. He was so complimentary when I was talking about this next film, and he really was. And I mean, it doesn't take. I mean, he's widely considered to be one of the best working film actors out there, and to have that kind of support and the compliments from him, it's a big deal. It's good. I'm really excited with this next thing. He's going to be amazing, because I'm really kind of finding my feet. And but yeah, man, I was really thrilled. A little movie that was made essentially in Ireland, Northern Ireland, like, for under $5 million, held its own against these big studio and Netflix tentpole movies for like a few weeks. I think that's massive. I mean, I thought I was so it was like, because I felt like Zone for me was like, this guy can direct a movie, he can deliver a movie, he can deal with high profile talent. Everybody was happy with it. It was profitable. It was that kind of okay, that's your first thing. And then One Way is like, shit, like this guy's got a real, point of view, which I think is what makes a filmmaker, which is different than being a director. So that's why probably One Way wasn't that enjoyable. It was painful, because you're pushing to, you're constantly pushing to like make it as good as it can be, because the opportunities are there to do that, with the material and what was shot and stuff, and the talent. I mean, he was like Colson and Storm, like all of them, and Kevin and Travis and Drea, but it was really I think it's a spectacular example of a bunch of actors working together in this like kind of fucking gritty, grungy, intense kind of pressure cooker, Yeah,
absolutely. Well, I think that we've got a lot. We got covered a lot today.
Yeah, and you know what?
I'm
going to watch the Walter Hill podcast that you
That's
did.
a good one, because it's short. Yeah. It's very short.
Oh, is
it? Well, I had limited time, or else I would have been asking him. I even say at the end of it, I told him, I said I could ask you questions from here until eternity. I focused mostly on his new film, but I got in a couple of questions, or started talking a little bit about Extreme Prejudice and Johnny Handsome, and working with Nick Nolte and Mickey Rourke and stuff like that. But I mean, I was a big fan as a kid, in the, still am. And there was so much I could have asked him about.
Yeah. I mean, he's a legend. Like, I mean, and I think that the Western, I mean, I was aware of the Western, and they had a screening there a couple of months back. Maybe not even that, because it came out after One Way. But he's and the big thing is that you keep working. For a guy like that, like he's still working, and and for that reviewer, I can't remember who it was, but said, "Oh, this one." I was like, "Holy shit, man! I'll take that."
Yeah.
Not that I grew up like obsessed with Walter Hill, but I love 48 Hours and and all the movies you mentioned, Johnny Handsome. I remember they're coming out, and then his westerns and whatever, and the Warriors. So he's just like, but he is like, he's a fucking legend, you know. I mean, he's like, he is, and you know, maybe he's underrated. Maybe he's not celebrated enough.
I think so, because he only
Yeah.
had he only had a few films that were considered box office like hits as a director.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, sure. I mean, but he really is like one of the great living, you know, filmmakers in America,
Yeah.
you know. He is. I mean, and the fact he's still doing it is, and you do, man. I mean, I was like, holy shit, you got Walter Hill on the show. And I love the fact that you had David Duchovny, because I loved his TV show, the Californication. And I hope he makes a show about the stunt, like he wrote it, was it because he's a novelist, right?
He was talking last year about working with Showtime on one of his books, but I haven't heard anything about it, so I don't know.
Funny thing is like he it's about he plays a stunt, or in the book it's a stunt man who's got 3 wives up in Joshua Tree, and they're all on the ranch, and I don't know, they're trying to take his land, you know, the state or some shit. Whatever it is, it just sounds like an absolute jewel. And the guy directing it are the nobodies who made Peanut Butter Falcon, which it started out as a nothing movie and it became what it was. I hope it works out, because Californication is one of the best TV shows I've ever seen. I mean, incredible. And I wasn't a fan of X-Files. I'm not a fan of anything he's done other than Californication. I think is absolutely incredible. And I'd love to see that show that, you know, up in Joshua Tree made, because it sounds like another classic, you know. So we'll see.
Well, if there's one other thing I would recommend with David in it, would be the first thing I believe I ever saw him in was this movie called The Rapture with Mimi Rogers.
Oh, right.
So if you haven't seen that's one I forget I forget who the director was, but it's a very interesting film.
All right, I'll check it out. Check it out.
But yeah, I'm a huge fan of Californication too.
I mean, amazing show. And because I lived in Venice for 50 years, and Google ruined it, tech companies ruined it, and Californication came out and they ruined it. If anyone wants to see what Venice was like, just go to Playa del Rey, which is just down south of Venice, and it's like the way Venice was. But the tech companies ruined it, and the show captures just before it fell into that shithole of tech money, and just the characters. It's a great show. It's just a TV show, you know. So
definitely.
All right, man. Well,
all right. Well, I wish you good. What's that?
I'll see you on the next one.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, good luck with when you go overseas, and looking forward to seeing what you come up with.
Yeah, I'm excited, man. It's going to be strong. And thanks for doing this again. You have a great. I really like your guests. I think you've got a good thing going here.
I appreciate that. I appreciate it. Well, you have a great rest of your night.
You too, man. Take it easy.
You too. Bye.